if you can think of any other ways that people might try to counter this and say that no, what Russia's doing is right or good, actually, let me know in the comment section below. Do bear in mind, though, that if you come in there actually being a full-on, Russia apologist right now for what's going on, I reserve the right to be violent in my comment section, but we're gonna hit the record button, and I'm just gonna go ahead and say we are not gonna do fan art at the beginning of Ukraine coverage anymore, because there's one, too many things happening where Ukraine is concerned, and two, while there may be videos that come out that have the fan art attached to it for the Ukraine stuff, bear in mind that not every video pops out chronologically, but I'm not going to be showing fan art at the beginning of Ukraine coverage because I feel like, I don't know, it feels weird and wrong given the severity of what's going on in Ukraine. Also, Irish Swede said, hopefully you get another 24 hours added tomorrow. You told me, and you told all of chat, the amount you have to threaten me in terms of monetary ability. So, I mean, it feels weird to levy a saying when you're just like, it's like holding a board wipe in Magic the Gathering and be like, I sure hope nobody has an austere command. Boy howdy, that'd be real weird. I don't feel comfortable. And I don't think people who put in fan art would be comfortable having their fan art at the beginning of videos when I know we're going to be discussing war crimes. Most people accept that when I'm going to be covering deep and hard topics, usually I do put fan art at the beginning anyway as a matter of habit, but we're just not going to do it here. That said, let's go ahead and read this. Thank you very much for dropping this information in here so I can read it over. This is from Amnesty International. Ukraine, cluster munitions, kill child and 2 other civilians taking shelter at a preschool. Can I just take a minute? Remember, Nicholas J. Fuentes is the type of person who praises this kind of shit. Marjorie Taylor Greene is the type of person who doesn't condemn Nick Fuentes after he praises this kind of shit. I just want you to remember that, given that she's the person that's supposed to represent me and Georgia's district in Washington. I can't not remember that. Okay, let's go. A preschool in northeastern Ukraine was hit on the morning of 25th February with the widely banned cluster munitions while civilians took shelter inside, killing 3 of them, including a child, and wounding another child. Amnesty International said today that the attack appears to have been carried out by Russian forces, which were operating nearby, and which have a shameful record of using cluster munitions in populated areas. Tater Shaman, thank you very much for resubscribing, though I won't be saying that word. Yeah, you don't fucking shoot at civilians taking shelter. I'm sorry. You just don't. Not to mention, a fucking preschool? Really? 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 That's where you aim your weapons. Okay. Sure. And if anybody wants to give the argument, because I'm sure there's going to be somebody who's going to give the argument in the comment section. But some soldiers might be using those areas to shelter as well. So that makes it a valid military target. I have an idea. How about you don't be the apologist for the country invading a sovereign nation? How about you do that? And preemptively shut the fuck up. In fact, actually, measure the thickness of drywall with your skull and then come back into the comment section. You'll be infinitely more cogent. Percussive maintenance does wonders. Now, let's continue. the just preempting the apologetics for killing kids that I know somebody's going to do. Amnesty International has confirmed that a 22mm Uragan rocket dropped cluster munitions on the Sanchenko nursery and kindergarten in the town of, I'm going to mispronounce all of these, and I'm sorry, in the town of Oktyrka and Sumy Oblast, where local people were seeking safety from the fighting. The strike may constitute a war crime. I feel like it just does constitute a war crime. I feel like it just does constitute a war crime. There is no possible justification for dropping cluster munitions in populated areas, let alone near a high school, said Agnes Kalamard, a Secretary General of Amnesty International. This attack bears all the hallmarks of Russia's use of inherently indiscriminate and internationally banned weapons, and shows flagrant disregard for human life. The strike violates the prohibition on indiscriminate attacks and damaged a school, a structure legally entitled to special protection. Under the 2008 Convention on Cluster Munitions, a treaty backed by more than 100 states, but which Ukraine and Russia have not joined, the use, development, protection, acquisition, stockpiling, and transfer of cluster munitions is prohibited under all circumstances. Customary international humanitarian law prohibits the use of inherently indiscriminate weapons, such as cluster munitions. Launching indiscriminate attacks that kill or injure civilians constitutes a war crime. Ran the Fool, thank you for the 200 bits. Apparently, we've started a hype train. Apologies to everybody who likes the regular energy of hype trains. Given what we're covering, I'm going to be ignoring a good bit of the hype train. You want to throw bits and donos and subs and all that? I'm not going to stop you, but do bear in mind there's a reason I won't be acknowledging it past this point. Drone video footage taken from the scene shows that cluster munitions struck at least 7 locations on or near the building, 4 on the roof and 3 on the pavement immediately outside the school. 2 injured or dead civilians are also visible in the footage, as are pools of blood. So we definitely can't show that footage here because I've been knocked off Twitch before for doing so. An additional 65 photos and videos that Amnesty International acquired from a local source shows more details of the scenes, the victims and their family members, and the damage of the school. A quote is, "While I was walking down with my wife, there were immediate explosions," an older man told a contact working with Amnesty International. You see, everyone is covered with blood, everything, look at it. Fuck, it kills me, the fact that it's a kindergarten. What's this they shoot at? At military objects? Where are those? Where are those? Red Joker, thank you for the 200 bits. The 220 millimeter Ergen rocket, either a 9M27K or a 9M27K1, carries 39N210 or 9N235 cluster munitions, which are nearly identical and differ only in the length of time delay for their self-destruct feature. The 7 impacts on and near the school show damage, including distinctive spalling on the ground, consistent with the expected damage from those cluster munitions. These are not good things. And of course, the USA still uses cluster bombs. Well, yeah, we're not exactly clean either. But I will say this, in a situation like this, if everybody wants to engage in whataboutism, not chat right now, but people who want to engage in whataboutism, what about the United States? We're not talking about the United States right now, so do yourself a favor. Yeet. As first reported by the open source investigation organization Bellingcat, the remains of the nose cone and cargo compartment of the 9M27K rocket were discovered 200 meters to the east. Open source reports indicate there were Russian forces to the west of Otkirka. The source of the rocket launched based upon the flight trajectory at the time of the attack. A logistics storage yard 300 meters north of the school may have been the target of the attack. However, multiple launch rocket systems, like the 22mm Ergen rockets used in this attack, are unguided and notoriously inaccurate, and should never be used in civilian-populated areas. In addition, because they scatter munitions over a wide area and have an extremely high dud rate of up to 20%, and because of the consequent threat they pose to civilians, cluster munitions are inherently indiscriminate weapons that are internationally banned by a treaty backed by more than 100 states. The use of those weapons violates the prohibition on indiscriminate attacks. This is the 4th attack in this conflict that has struck a school that Amnesty International has verified. On the 17th of February, during increased shelling along the line of control, Russian-backed forces struck a kindergarten in the town of Stanitsia, Luhanska, wounding 3 civilians. On the evening of the 25th of February, a missile damaged school number 48 in Mariupol, blowing in the windows and pockmarking the walls with metal fragments. And on the 26th of February, an explosive weapon, most likely an artillery shell, hit the second story of a kindergarten in Chernihiv, starting a fire that was likely detected by the VIIRS environmental satellite sensors. Under international humanitarian law, educational facilities are entitled to heightened protections as long as they are not used with military purposes. None of the schools damaged in the incidents documented by Amnesty International appear to have been used for military purposes. Parties to a conflict are required to take special care to avoid destroying or damaging them, a requirement that Russian forces do not appear to be meeting, judging from a growing number of attacks. Said Russia has been going for these on purpose. Do you feel like the strategy there is to wholly and totally demoralize Ukrainian citizens? Because this kind of strategy feels like it would only anger them to the point of retaliation. Like, that would be my... Like, here's the thing. Let's pretend this was the United States, and a kindergarten got attacked immediately. Now, despite the fact that United States citizens, when it comes to our own weapons and school shootings, are unilaterally fucking numb to those issues and always go with the hopes and prayers this was such a tragedy thing. But let's pretend for a moment it was a foreign invasion that destroyed a school. What do you think would happen? Every redneck in a 50-mile radius of that school would be marching with rifles. If you didn't have a militia before, you would have a militia afterwards. The Steel Man is that the troops are massively undertrained, so they targeted buildings illegally. It is amazing when the Steel Man doesn't make it sound any better. This is the lovely thing about consequentialism. It doesn't fucking matter if they were untrained. You still blew up a school. You don't just get to, oops, Butterfingers, when you blow up a school. I'm sorry. In 2019, Ukraine endorsed the Safe Schools Declaration, which included commitments to strengthen the protection of schools during armed conflict and to restrict their use for military purposes. All parties to the current conflict should respect the Safe Schools Declaration and its guidelines. It's stomach-turning to see an indiscriminate attack on a nursery and a kindergarten where civilians are seeking safe haven. Plain and simple, this should be investigated as a war crime. As the human tragedy unfolds in Ukraine, any person who commits war crimes should be held individually accountable before the International Crimes Court, or the ICC, or another international crime justice process at the national or international level. It is imperative that UN member states and the ICC urgently consider how to ensure the timely and effective collection of preservation of evidence of any crimes under international law committed to Ukraine. So I agree with the statement. This is one of the benefits of using drone footage. When you use drone footage, you don't have to worry about the human life consequence of gathering the data on their war crimes. So it won't matter what the UN thinks as long as Russia can veto it. Yeah, therein lies half the problem with the structure of the United Nations. The fact that Russia can just go, no. Okay, cool. That's fair. Like, I agree that everybody should get a vote, especially when it comes to things that, affect you and your country. But once you start invading another country, I feel like at that point we're just like, okay, you violated the long peace. We're gonna take your veto into consideration under our left foot. While Russia and Ukraine are not parties to the ICC, in 2015, Ukraine accepted the court's jurisdiction over alleged crimes committed on its territory from the 20th of February, 2014. So the stuff in Crimea, I believe. I mean, I don't think anybody's surprised that Russia's committing war crimes here. I mean, we don't do a very good job of stopping that in our own troops. That's not a good fucking thing in any way, shape, or form. In fact, actually, I would say that it's nightmarishly fucked up. Let's go over the potential counterpoints that people might use here. So, of course, we have the undertrained personnel. I believe that even whenever you're talking about militaries, undertrained personnel is never and has never been a good excuse for destroying protected targets. That stuff still falls onto the chain of command. They are still responsible, irrespective, because they chose to put the untrained troops out there. So they can't just wipe their fingers clean and go, we sent a bunch of dumb 19-year-olds out to do it. We didn't mean for that to happen. The other one, anybody that says that what about if these were used for military purposes? Article already states that these schools were not being used for military purposes. What are some other ways somebody might counter this and try to engage in being a Russia apologist? We know the way Russia is handling this. They have said that a handful of sectors in Ukraine have declared their independence from Ukraine, and they are merely coming in and liberating those areas from the devastating whatever-ocracy they believe Ukraine is for the purpose of that. Yeah, no, we can call bullshit on that very, very quickly. The burden of proof is on Russia to prove that they were being used for military purposes. Yep, especially when the footage that has been gathered so far apparently doesn't indicate that. We are taking that on Amnesty International's word. Bear that in mind. Always grains of salt. It said, you don't think it's a good idea to expel a country for the UN forum, but I don't see why they can't have their privileges revoked, like sitting on councils. I think revoking privileges temporarily would be a good idea in this particular case. At least, like, revoke the ability to veto. You can abstain from something, but you can't veto right now. That would be, I feel like that would be ideal. It would also potentially make it harder for the United States to engage in war crimes. Just saying, like, this is a good thing all around for preservation of established human life. If you can think of any other ways that people might try to counter this and say that no, what Russia's doing is right or good, actually, let me know in the comment section below. Do bear in mind, though, that if you come in there actually being a full-on, Russia apologist right now for what's going on, I reserve the right to be violent in my comment section. But there is room for devil's advocacy here. Maybe have Russia go through the same punishment that Germany went through during the World Wars. So, the problem, and I'm not saying that they shouldn't. I'm not saying that another realm of Nuremberg trials shouldn't happen. But the problem is, with World War II, Germany had not only been invading places for a very long and established time. I know, Russia, Crimea, we have, counterpoints here. But there was also a lot of stuff that was going on top of that, the Holocaust, that needed to be talked about during the Nuremberg trials, that they would put the task for. Right now, if you were to just put them to task for what was happening in Ukraine in the last few days, I don't think the punishments would be anywhere near as severe as what happened to Germany. But I also don't think we should let them have a year to 5 years to do enough stuff to deserve those kinds of punishments. I think that's also impractical and creates a giant loss of human life that is not fucking necessary. Yeah, that requires us to go to war with Russia and have them lose. I agree with that. That is the other issue. That requires us to put boots on the ground and them also lose. Whereas just repelling them from Ukraine and establishing a better parallel between Ukraine and Russia is not the same thing as making Russia lose a whole war on their own territory like what happened in Germany. I will say it's agitating to see people on American soil who call themselves American patriots who are jumping for joy at what Russia's doing. I feel like every person who does that needs to take some time to think about why they're doing that, why they've taken that stance, and really evaluate if you would call yourself a good person when you did so. If you want to support the channel and what I do, hit the like button, subscribe. There's ways to hop in the description. You know what to do. I'm not going to plug myself too terribly much when we're talking about literal war crimes. Insert end of video tagline here.